Hey everybody, this is Matthew Naiman from Shutterstock.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at Yum from RocketStock. Yum is a collection of over 100 video elements and is designed to be the ultimate food content kit for vloggers. It's compatible with every major nonlinear editing system out there, and the pack includes 16 lower thirds, 20 animated transitions, 15 animated characters, and 50 loopable backgrounds. Today, we're going to look at Yum using Adobe After Effects, Adobe Premiere, and Final Cut Pro, but it's compatible with just about any nonlinear editing system out there. Bon appetit, let's get started. We're going to start off taking a look at Yum in Adobe After Effects. I've grabbed two pieces of stock from Shutterstock.com. We have an egg falling into some flour, and we have some young hip person taking photos of their food instead of eating it. Don't get me started. Anyway, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to establish kind of a funky transition between these two clips, and we're going to do that with the use of track mats. Yum comes with pre-rendered track mats, which are incredibly helpful, and the one I've selected is this guy, because what's better than a star wipe, right? All of the transition mats provided from the Yum package have an alpha channel, meaning we have a white star on a transparent background, and if I pull it into our composition, that's exactly what we see. I think we're going to want to center this star maybe on our egg and also time it with the hit. Yeah, something along those lines. You'll also see that I have plenty of resolution to work with because all of the Yum Pack assets are provided in 4K, which is excellent. I can even afford to scale it down a little bit for slightly greater duration. Awesome. Now, the way that track mats operate in Adobe After Effects is we have this little toggle switches and modes button. This toggles between our sort of checkboxes for motion blur and for frame blending and for 3D, and also toggles to blending modes and track mats. A track mat allows a layer to inherit properties of the layer above it. You can inherit alpha properties or luma properties if it's based on brightness, or you can invert those properties. You'll see that if I set the track mat of this layer to alpha mat, it only shows through where the layer above has alpha as a property. So when I hit play, our footage draws on with the alpha of the layer above it. We do run into one small problem. That small problem is this. Hey, where'd our footage go? Well, our track mat ended right here, meaning the layer below ceases to draw information from the layer above, meaning the layer above is completely clear, meaning there's no alpha information to go to it, so it stops showing. How can we solve this problem? Well, there's a couple of ways. We could split this layer here using a handy shortcut, Command-Shift-D. That will split this layer in half, and if we disable track mat and then drop it back above the mat, it'll pick up right before our track matted layer begins and keep playing. But you end up with a lot of split layers that way if you're doing some complex transitions, and I prefer doing it this way. You can go right to the last frame of your alpha mat, right-click on it, go to Time, and click Freeze on Last Frame. That will now create one long unified layer with animation off the top, and then freeze full frame at the last frame, allowing you to continue seeing the footage underneath and using that transition with very limited fuss. Let's also look at a way to spice up our transition a little bit. Provided in the Yum pack are a bunch of pre-rendered transitions as well. If we jump into Transition Graphics and jump down to 18, I believe you'll see we have a very similar looking star effect. This one, however, is pre-rendered with small stars in the background, and it opens up after the fact, which is great. What we're going to do is we're going to line it up on the timeline to match our track mat exactly, and we're going to pop open our track mat, go to the Transform Tools, hit Command-C, or if you're on Windows, Control-C, and then paste that information to our transition so it inherits the exact same transformation properties that we've put on our mat. We can now turn it and rotate it in time so that it's at the right point, and if we play these two back to back, we get this very cool transition effect. Star wipe. I love it. One of the other things that comes in the Yum pack is animated backgrounds, which are incredibly handy. I'm going to grab an animated background. Let's go for this blue checkerboard table effect. Also going to scale it down a little bit because it comes in 4K and we're working in 1080. And I'm going to duplicate our track mat above that, offset it in time to where I'd like it, and then use it on our background to bring our background in. Moves to his eggs, and new track mat. Let's bring those both a little earlier, and I think this one I'm going to center. I do that by simply resetting the transforms. Star wipe to tablecloth. One of the other wonderful assets provided in the Yum pack is some pre-animated characters, which save you a bunch of time if you're trying to make cute little foodie graphics. You know, we have an apple, banana, but we all know that the superstar is the hamburger. So let's throw in a hamburger here on top of our background. Grab him, throw him in there, and he should probably pop up right about when the star's done. Right to there. And he takes a little jump, so we want him in frame before the jump. Why don't we solidify his scale there and his position, maybe even his rotation. Then using the page up keys, let's jump back maybe 7, 8 frames, scale him down to 0, and slide him up. I don't think we're going to actually end up giving him rotation. And then let's ease him in. Let's see what he looks like. Hey, it's a hamburger buddy. You'll also see that once again we lose him right at the end because the clip ends, but it's very easy to deal with. We can either, much like our track mat, freeze on last frame, or we can go to the very last frame of this using O. It's a handy shortcut. O goes to the end, I goes to the beginning. O. Then I'm going to copy and paste this layer, and using open square bracket, drag it to the left, and I'm going to slide this in time to find right before the jump from his full stand. I apologize, I'm also going to disable all my keyframes and reset his positioning. Yeah, let's go with that. What I've done is cut out his introductory animation, which means he should jump and then jump again. I also let our video reappear below us. So I'm going to use the same trick there. Time, freeze on last frame. Shouldn't be a problem anymore. Hey, Mr. Burger, jump with joy, because you're a hamburger. Here we are in Adobe Premiere, and we're going to take a look at how to use some of the Yum pack assets in this piece of software. As you can see, I have this delicious looking clip of some vegetables being sauteed. I think I might have to cut this tutorial a little short because frankly, folks, I'm getting a bit hungry. Anyway, I think we're going to transition into this clip and then transition out to a background and also build a lower third. Let's take a look at how to do that, and let's see how quickly we can do it because my mouth is watering. If we jump into our assets, I think we're going to find a background that we like. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And let me drag this over so I can see our names. Backgrounds, yeah. I quite like this diamond background. Very nice. So we're going to drag it onto the timeline below our footage. We're also going to nix our audio. You'll see it's not long enough to run under our footage, but that's no problem at all. We're actually just going to Command-C, copy that footage, and then just Command-V a bunch of times and make it long enough. Thankfully, these backgrounds are designed to loop, which means we get a nice frame-accurate loop out of them. Let me disable this footage for a moment. You'll also notice that the footage looks different here than it does here. That's because we're working in a 1080p timeline, but all the Yum assets from RocketStock are 4K. So I'm going to select all of them, right-click, and hit Set to Frame Size, and now this is no longer a problem. I also don't like working with all of these clips underneath our source footage because it's easy for something to get bumped and misplaced. So a nice solution is to right-click on all of them, click Nest, and then I'm going to call this Looping Diamond Background. And as you'll see, We now have a single clip looping diamond background that runs underneath, much neater, and if we double click, we get access to all the original files that we used to make that nest, and we can just close that and go back to our main timeline. Let's re-enable our video, and let's look at how to transition into this footage from our background. For that, we're going to use track mats. So I have this diamond transition mat that I quite like and that matches our background. Let's look how to use that to make a transition on our footage from the diamond background. The first thing we're going to want to do is figure out where we want to transition. Why don't we start right from the vegetables kind of flying up in the air. I'm going to drag our transition there, and if we have a look at it, you see it's just a white diamond that grows. Kind of boring, a little weird looking. But we can click on our Effects tab and search for an effect called Track Mat Key. I'm going to drop our Track Mat key on the footage, not on the transition that we're using as the track mat. And then under Effects Controls, I want to look at which video line, which video track our transition is on. It's currently on track 3. So in the Effects panel for our clip, under Track Mat Key, I want to select Mat Video 3. Oh my God, look at that. So suddenly that video is using the alpha channel of our track mat to transition on. Let's have a look. Now you can see this clip is not being track matted before the transition, so we just want to make sure that we cut it before we want it to appear. There you go, background transitions onto our pan, lovely. I think right there with everything landing, we're going to copy this clip and paste it, and let's go find our perfect out point, probably right there where everything lands. Drag our transition there, and very importantly, we're going to cut our clip to match this. I did that by simply pressing B, using the blade tool to cut our clip. And on this new clip, because the effects are not linked between the two clips, I can click reverse on the alpha mat, which means when I hit play, it wipes on, and the second one wipes it off. Couldn't be simpler. Next, we're going to build a small title here, just to introduce whatever video this would be the opening screen of. I'm going to jump down to our project, and one of the other wonderful assets that Yum comes with is all of these fantastic lower thirds. So I'm going to jump in and grab a dark lower third. Beautiful, I like that. And I'm going to drag it out here onto video track 4 so that it does not interfere with the alpha of this, which is drawing from layer 3. And we probably want it to come on maybe starting right there so it catches up with our transition. Wonderful, you can see how beautifully animated it is. Comes on nicely, animates out. We can decide on a duration for our title. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's cut this, jump to the animate out. Drag those two halves together and delete that. So let's take a look at our title bar growing. Just got enough time to read something, and then it'll animate out. Now, what do we want it to say? Well, what else would we expect it to say other than delicious? And there's only one font that can do this comp justice, and that's the font we all know as Comic Sans Bold. I'm going to scale it up a little bit. But you'll notice I'm not going to completely center it because I'd like it to sit on the right place over our lower third. And I'd rather not do the transform controls for a reason I will show you shortly. Well, let's see, I'm going to drag it back here. Lovely, delicious, couldn't ask for more. And we're going to animate it on by copying our track mat, pasting it there, dragging it on top, and under the effects library, searching for track, throwing our track mat on our title, and then setting that to video 6. And as you'll see, the lower third should wipe that on very cleanly. I don't think it gets any better than that. Why don't we jump over to Final Cut Pro and take a quick look at how to use Yum assets there. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at how to use Yum assets in Final Cut Pro. We have this very, very cool stop motion video of a cucumber being sliced. And we have this chef out of focus preparing some stuff in the background. And I just thought we'd take a quick look at how to transition from one to the other using some track mats from Yum. So if we scroll down, the one thing I'll say about Final Cut is that it really has an excellent media browser. We can kind of take a look at some transitions right here as they are. And why don't we go for something actually a little cucumber shaped? Why don't we transition in with this track mat right here? Awesome. I'm simply going to pull it onto the timeline where I want to make my transition. Let's go right there. Actually, why don't I use the one that goes the other way so that it mimics the shape of the cucumber from the previous shot. Right there. Perfect. Now, the way that we get track mats to work in Final Cut Pro is not to use an effect like in Adobe Premiere, but we change the blending mode of this layer. So we want to jump up to our compositing window, and under blend mode, select stencil alpha. So what that does is it basically stencils the alpha downwards to everything below it. I'm going to slide that forwards a little bit, right about to there. Now you'll notice that we can't see the other footage underneath it because it is stenciling alpha to all layers, not just this layer. The way we solve that is by selecting both, right-clicking, and setting new compound clip. We're going to call it cucumber transition. And now you see our previous problem is gone and our cucumber shaped transition works beautifully. We can also grab one of these pre-rendered transitions with the red dots, drop it on top, and because it's pre-rendered with alpha, there's very little work to do. And because it's covering our previous transition, it simply wipes from one to the other. And with basically no work, we have a really beautiful transition. Well, everybody, that's it for me today. I hope you found this quick look at the Shutterstock.com Yum pack useful. You can find other great transition packs and tutorials like this one at Shutterstock.com, and we'll be here to help you get them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go make a very complicated looking dish, take a photo of it, and post it on Instagram so people think that I eat really well all the time. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.